Oh, not yet.
There we go. Good to go.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We'll just give it another couple of minutes whilst people are joining. In the meantime, if you wouldn't mind popping your name, the organization or club that you're from, and also the county you're in, into the chat, that would be really helpful for us so that we can keep track of who's attending. And while you're doing that, we'll get going very shortly.
I would also mention as well, just for those of us that are organising the meeting today, that we did put on the form an opportunity for people to ask questions beforehand, but I didn't see anything that had been posed to us. But obviously that doesn't mean to say people still can't if they want to later on.
Okay. I make it 1 minute past, so we'll give it till 2 minutes past, and then we will make a start, just in case people are running back in through the door. Evening to those of you who are just joining us. I can see a few people popping up. We're just holding off for 2 seconds whilst people are joining, and then we will make a start. Just for the benefit of those people who have just joined us, if you wouldn't mind briefly popping your name, the organisation or club you're from, and the county you're in into the chat, that would be really helpful for us just to keep track of everyone so we know who's attending. Right, I make that 2 minutes past now, so I think we will make a start. And oh, just as I say that, someone else is joining. Evening all, thank you for joining us. We're just having a few people popping in still, so we will just wait briefly. For those of you that have just joined, if you wouldn't mind popping your name, the organisation or club you're from, and the county you're in the chat, that would be really helpful. I think we'll make a start now, and then if you guys wouldn't mind admitting people once we get going, that would be much appreciated. So thank you very much for joining us, everyone, for our bystander awareness evening, and how to become an active bystander. My name's Callum. I'm the Sport Welfare Officer for Get Berkshire Active. I've also got some of my colleagues on with us who I will introduce shortly. Tonight's presentation, we're very lucky to have Kevin with us from the NWG network. To go through all things bystander awareness and how to intervene when you see poor behavior. And obviously, for most of us, it would be in a sporting context, about how to intervene when there's poor behavior, but you can also use this in everyday life, just when you see other poor behavior that you see, whether that be sexual harassment or workplace bullying, anything like that. So it's a really useful tool for all parts of life. So, as I say, I'm Callum. I work for Get Berkshire Active, and I'm the Sport Welfare Officer for Berkshire. I have also our colleagues with us this evening. We work as a cluster. So I've got Heidi from Oxfordshire, Yvette from Bucks, and Sarah and Sue from Hampshire. We have everyone's contact details up on the screen now. And if you would like those and you don't manage to get them down now, just pop in the chat and we can give you our details for the correct county. I'm hoping most of you will have already had a bit of contact with us. So what we thought we'd just very briefly ask each member of the team to introduce themselves so that you can see a face to the name, because that can be helpful as well. So Sarah, if we just start with you, please.
Yeah, hi, I'm Sarah, one of the two welfare officers in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. Energise me.
And then Sue, we'll go to you next as your Sarah's colleague.
Hi, I am indeed. I'm Sue Forber. I'm the other Sport Welfare Officer for Hampshire and the Isle of Wight.
And if we could come to yourself, Heidi, now, please.
Hi everyone, so I'm Heidi Yates and I'm the Sport Welfare Officer at Active Oxfordshire, covering the county of Oxfordshire.
And Yvette, you're not on my screen, but I believe you are here. So if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself quickly.
Hi, Callum. I am here. Yeah, I'm Yvette. I'm the Sports Welfare Officer for Bucks and Milton Keynes.
Perfect. Thank you very much, everyone. Hopefully that's nice so everyone can just see a face, as we do so much stuff online these days. You don't always get to see faces, so we try and do that when we can. just before we make a start, we are going to be having a survey at the end of the forum. So if there's any feedback or comments you want to make, please do that, and that helps us form things going forward. Most of the subjects of forums we've had previously have come from people's feedback, so we very much listen to what people want to hear. There's a QR code on screen now that you can get up and then maybe fill out at the end of the survey. And then finally, before we make a start, we're just promoting our next forum, which will be happening in May on the 12th. And we're going to be covering mental health and sport. And we'll have a member of the team from Mind coming to present there. So that's another one, just to get a date in your diary. And we will send out the invite to that shortly. So that's everything from me. I will hand over to Kevin, who will introduce himself properly. And yes, please pop any questions you have in the chat, and we will do our best to answer them at the end. So over to you, Kevin.
Okay, I'll share my screen.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah. Yeah. As the tech makes me sweat.
There we go. Something's coming up now. We've got it. Right, over to you, Kevin.
Yeah. While I'm waiting to load up, colleagues, just let you know, my name's Kev Murphy. I work for the NWG Network. We're a charity based in Derby, and we work within the field of child exploitation. And since 2017-18, we've been working with Sport England to help raise awareness of how kids can be exploited through sport. And then since 3 or 4 years ago, we became one of the system partners in Safeguarding Partnership. And one of our jobs has been to promote bystander interventions for the sports sector. So basically what we're doing, we're teaching sports coaches to intervene where children start behaving in an appropriate manner. And we're using the power of the sports coach to help influence change and not call kids out. We want to call youngsters in. It's primarily about reducing violence against women and girls. But at the same time, we also cover topics such as violence against men and boys. And the whole nub of this is about creating a safer sporting environment. One of the statistics which Sport England gave to us when we first started out this work was 55% of girls drop out of sport at the age of 15. And that rises to 63% when they get the age to 17. So we really want to try and look at what were the issues here. And is violence against girls one of these issues which prevents girls from going, or just girls just have enough? But again, it is looking at that safer culture in sport. And please, colleagues, do ask any questions at any time. Colleagues are looking at the chat, and we'll be sort of finishing on time just to make sure we've got time for a bit of Q&A. And there's colleagues on this call who have already done the full 6 hours worth of training. So we're just giving you a bit of an insight into what we can actually deliver for you, and also to make you think about what potential you could do within your sports clubs. So I'm just going to read this little quote and this little passage out here. There was an important job to be done, and everybody was sure that somebody would do it. Anybody could have done it, but nobody did it. Somebody got angry about that because it was everybody's job. Everybody thought anybody could do it, but nobody realised that everybody wouldn't do it. It then ended up that everybody blamed somebody when nobody did what anybody could have done. And we need you to be that active bystander. So if we are seeing and hearing inappropriate things, just like Callum's mentioned there, bullying in the workplace, sexual harassment on the streets, youngsters using inappropriate language, because what we know from a child exploitation organisation is all sexualised violence starts with language. So if we can utilise the power of the coach to stop children using inappropriate language at the earliest opportunity, we have a far better chance of them not turning into perpetrators later on in their lives. And we'll give you some research a bit later in the session to sort of back up what we're actually trying to say. So we need you to be that bystander, because too many instances people have looked away far too often, and harm has occurred. I'll give you some examples about that. So since 2020, we've had reviews published by the FA, Swim England, England Rugby, ECB, British Gymnastics and UK Athletics. And I'm just thinking at the weekend, we saw plenty of football on the telly. We certainly saw rugby, we saw athletics, and we certainly did see cricket with the Champions Cup final over in Bahrain. But in every one of these instances, huge amounts of money went into these reviews. And in every single one of them, there were people in those organisations who saw what was happening and chose to look the other way. Gymnastics, the White Review in particular, it's a horrendous report. I think it's about 309 pages long, cost an awful lot of money. But how can so many sports coaches, so many parents, so many athletes see wrongdoing going off right in front of people and did nothing about it and turn the other cheek? Because unless we stop that, what is going to be the next sport that is going to be subject to review? And I'm looking at that group there. That must have cost probably best part of £100 million. Now, what could you do with a small slice of that pie for your sports club, your athletics club, your swimming club, your football club, to invest in facilities, training, kit? And that's what this whole course is all about, making sure people don't look the other way and intervene at the earliest opportunity. So what is a bystander? A bystander is you and me. We are witness to a situation, and every single person on this call has been witness to a situation. It may have been in the street, it may have been certainly in schools, it could have been in the shops, it could have been in the communities, could have been in the pubs, it can be anywhere. And we're not directly involved. We are not the victim or the wrongdoer. And in these instances, we use the term wrongdoer rather than perpetrator. Because if we start talking about perpetrator, our thought processes go right to the high end, highly sexualized, violent offenders, where a lot of these wrongdoers are the people who cause slights against girls, will harass and bully boys, will intimidate children in their sports clubs, will intimidate children in their classrooms, in their schools and in their communities. And the idea is we need to make a decision to either get involved or not get involved. And what we want people to do is to do something about it. Sometimes not in that moment, because the whole concept of bystander intervention is one from personal safety. If anybody's ever done a first aid course, the first thing you learn about first aid is your own personal safety. And it's exactly the same for bystanders. We want people to be safe. So it's about assessing the situation and looking, how can I intervene in the moment or in a bit later? And we're going to look at a book called The Armies of Enablers. That's by a chap called Amos Guiora, who's a professor from Utah University. And we'll come back to him. But we have to think about those armies of enablers, because in every one of them reviews, there were people who enabled the abuse to occur by simply looking the other way. So in some of them, the perpetrators would have been caught. The perpetrators may have been thrown out of sport, subject to criminal justice procedures, hopefully jail terms. But the enablers who saw it get away scot-free. And that's what we've got to change. We've got to stop these people letting the side down and getting off the hook. And that's what our job is, to make sure everybody in our sports clubs doesn't look the other way and actually does something about it. So we'll just give you this bit of a quote from the book, from one of Amos Guiora's book. It's very tempting to take the side of the perpetrator. All the perpetrator asks is that the bystander does nothing. He appeals to the universal desire to see, hear and speak no evil. The victim, on the contrary, asks the bystander to share the burden of the pain. The victim demands action, engagement and remembering. And that comes from Judith Herman. And that's looking at some of the bystander interventions during the Holocaust, where people looked the other way. That's why we use the word perpetrate in this setting. But it's exactly the same. the universal desire to hear, see, and speak no evil. And we have to remember that, because if we keep bowing to that and listening to them three monkeys, we're going to be here again in the next 10 years' time with how many more reviews? And then if you think about the epidemic of violence against women and girls in our society, we have to start changing that. Remember, there's 2 to 3 women a week are murdered by their partners, and there's at least 10 women a week who take their own lives down to domestic abuse. And a lot of that, people know about it, but look the other way. And that's the point where we need to start thinking about intervening and start changing. So there's lots of bystander training out there, and they talk about the 4Ds, the 5Ds, distract, this. What we want people to do is look at the 4 stages of interventions, 1 to 4. And the first one is we notice the event. And most people actually do see it. If they see a slight in the pub, if they see harassment on the street, they will actually notice the event. And in most cases, they will interpret it as a problem. But sadly, a lot of people interpret it as a problem, but then think it's someone else's problem to solve. That's what we don't want to happen again. We want people to actually interpret it as a problem and then go to number 3, feel responsible for dealing with it. Then if you feel responsible for dealing with it, part of the training, part of this introduction tonight and any future training is about generating and understanding and possessing the skills to act in the particular moment. So we need to notice the event, interpret it, but then take that responsibility for dealing with it. If we go back to the White Review, and even in the Sheldon Review, there was children who were training on broken feet, injured ankles, injured knees. There were people who were humiliated, emotionally abused in front of all the children. That was witnessed by people in the centre, other coaches and parents. No one felt responsibility for dealing with it until later on, when a lot of the adults were the children became adults and decided, I need to do something about this now, because I can't have people dealing with what I had to do. But wouldn't it have been better if people have intervened in that moment and saying to that coach, why are you shouting and berating that child? Why are you humiliating that child? Why are you emotionally abusing that child? And check that behavior in that moment. And if you can't feel strong enough to act, you pass it on to somebody who can. But we make sure somebody does and takes the appropriate action. So we have to say, why don't people intervene? There's decades of research that confirms individual moral instincts, which are to help, are turned off when in groups. And that's by Graham Goulding in June 2023. And that is absolutely right. People think if you're in a group, there's more people who are going to intervene, but the opposite applies. It's a diffusion of responsibility. Therefore, it's not my job to intervene. They may not look like me. They may perceive it may be a dangerous situation, or there may be too many people around. Or the biggest pain and the biggest failure is someone else will do it. That mother and father of all assumptions that someone else will do it. And it looks like everybody thinks it's okay to do nothing, so therefore I will do nothing. And yet what we do know is when one person is brave enough to say stop or intervene in a different way, the group will follow. And then we get a different group actually intervening and doing something appropriate. So it really is important to try and shift that concept, shift that thinking, because bystander intervention is all about leadership. It's all about attitude and about mindset. And we want people to look at things differently now. And when they see something, is to have that moral conviction to do something about it, rather than just look the other way. So in the bystander interventions, we look at a 3-pronged approach. We can intervene with the wrongdoer, the victim, and we can also get some allies. So we got here and now and later. So with the wrongdoer, if you've got a young lad in a group either maybe in a club, in a sports centre, in a bar, and he's effing and jeffing, or he's belittling someone, or he's bullying, or using racist, homophobic, or sexist language, and sometimes these kids don't exactly know what they're saying, we need to interrupt that language. And that's why we're training sports coaches to be that catalyst for change, to interrupt in that particular moment. And we call these kids in. And when you look at the whole bigger picture of the training, we look at the sexual offences there and particular language relating to the sexual offences, so we can get these coaches to explain to the youngsters what their language is and the impact it can have on other people. And what we actually know from research, you get a false consensus of people if they say nothing and do nothing, think it's okay not to act. But when we get one person acting, we change that narrative, and that narrative changes to empower other people in a particular group to change the behavior of the individual. And we can, that means about changing focus, we can interrupt, we can use humor. And then sometimes later, it's really worth that sports coach or the volunteer or the parent or anybody else just having a word with that person to shift their attitudes by having an in-depth conversation. No shame, because what we don't want to do is shame children, because shame is a horrible muzzle. We could take that muzzle off and just talk to children about their language. We've got a better chance of stopping their behavior escalating and escalating and escalating. We also need to intervene with the victim. We need to show them support. We need to let them know that we've noticed what has gone on and offer them support to say, are you okay? And then later we can check in with them, maybe in a day or two later, to say, are you okay? We saw what happened at that club. Are you okay about going back to football, going back to netball, going back to cricket, going back to swimming next week? If you're not, let's work at it and let's give you that support to get them back. But one of the most important things you can do with being a bystander is to develop allies. And allies could be your friends, your colleagues, your fellow sports coaches, colleagues on here. Because the more allies you get, the more empowered you will be to change. And it's also confidence. So you could have a situation on a football pitch where there's one parent, and unfortunately it happens quite a lot, and we're just seeing this kind of behaviour seep into the world of cricket and rugby union and both league. You could have a person there bellowing at the ref, and you could have a referee who's 14, 15, 16, just refereeing for 20 quid a match. And this person is belittling, and believe me, these people are men and they are women. We need the group of parents to shift that attitude, to intervene, to challenge that parent, to stop that behaviour. Or if they don't feel strong enough, they need to go to the coach. They need to talk to an official. They need to talk to other club people. And that's where you get your allies. The more people involved, the more people who collectively notice what's wrong and agree to take action, the more power we have to stand and challenge that individual with that abusive, threatening, and sometimes violent behaviour, quite often against children. Because if we don't, what are we creating on the pitch? We are potentially creating the next generation entitled people who think screaming, shouting is okay because my mum and dad did it on the side, and I'm learning this is how I can control and manipulate situations. That's why we want more people to be the active bystander, to develop allies, to look at the wrongdoers and really support the victims. So we developed this program with colleagues from Exeter University. We developed a program called Football Onside. And what I will do, colleagues, I'll convert this to a PDF slide. I'll send it over to Heidi, and you can have copies of all these slides, because that link there will take you to a research report about the active bystander training which we're delivering, and the research which followed it from the academics from Exeter University, which proves this training works. And this mode of getting sport coaches to intervene is having a really good effect on children's behaviour. So it's about a football club in the UK, and it was at Exeter City in the community. And we work with players, coaches and staff to raise awareness, challenge myths about abuse, and particularly rape myths, build confidence in stepping up as active bystanders. So they did the whole 3 2-hour sessions over a period of 3 weeks. And everybody, to be fair, in the club started the first session and ended the third session. And the results were really encouraging. So participants showed a significant decrease in the acceptance of rape myths. And when we're doing the training, we go more in depth into the rape myths, which are a societal problem propagated by the media, unfortunately social media. And we talk about rape myths and we bust the myths. The more people who can actually challenge the narratives and challenge the myths of some of our children, the better opportunities we have of them actually learning that this behaviour is inappropriate. They felt more confident in their ability to intervene. That's what we want, that level of confidence to actually think, I've seen something there, or I've heard something, it's a real problem, it's my job to act, and I've got the skills to do something. And many reported an increase in willingness to challenge harmful behaviour. And that's about creating that same safe sporting environment for us all, by having that willingness to challenge harmful behaviour. So we're going to introduce it to the pyramid of harm now, because this pyramid is really sort of important when we look at it. So any building, the biggest part and strongest part of the building is the base. This is where you will find biased attitudes and beliefs. So in the world of sport, we'll have comments regularly thrown out like, women don't know the laws of the game, women are no good at sport, or he tackles like a girl. And particularly, he tackles like a girl. And I've heard, you big girls blaz. What are you doing this for? And what is demeaning girls. People are using gender as a demeaning tool. Yet the last time I looked at it, the women are actually smashing it. The women actually won a tournament. And I'm still waiting since 1966 for the bloody fellas to get the finger out. We've come close twice, but we still haven't got it there. But again, the women still don't get the same adulation as the males. But when we are using languages like that, at that bottom level, that's where the harm becomes ingrained and actually embedded. Then we go up the ladder, and this is where we get prejudices and microaggressions openly available and freedom of use. So this is where we'll have jokes, comments, minimization of issues, indifference, gender pay gap, the media. And some of these issues will be subtle, some will be unintentional, they will not be unintentional because they have learned it, and it's verbal and also non-verbal. So when we hear this things here, we think, oh, you got that call right, ref. Oh, you speak English so well. Get raped. And get raped came from Exeter in a community trust, where there was a young lad on the wing and he ran past a defender and he just says, got you raped, you mate, I raped you. Without really understanding the rape is the most serious sexual offence under the Sexual Offences Act, he used it as an analogy to run past the child. So the coaches called the kids in, had a conversation with them, and they challenged that narrative. And no one uses that word now. They use a complete different version because we had a conversation with them. And again, just think about the control that men have. And I use this, and there'll be colleagues in the court in the training here have heard it, is how many times do men say to good women, give us a smile, darling. Give us a smile. It might never happen. What if it has happened? What if the worst thing happened to you last night? Well, you had a really horrendous night, a really bad night. Yet a man is commanding you to smile. Just think about that. You're being commanded to smile. And how many people just go, bring them just to appease that person? That's power and that's control. And that is up the second stage of the pyramid of harm. Sorry, colleagues. Let me go and get a drink of water.
No worries, Kevin. So while we're just waiting for Kevin, I see that some people have had some difficulty with the chat and popping their details in. So some people have used the Q&A section, so feel free to do that as well if you haven't managed to use the chat. Just to pop your name, the club you're from, and the county you're in as well. That would be much appreciated.
Sorry, colleagues.
No worries, Kevin. Whenever you're ready, take your time.
Talking too much today. So then we get these biased attitudes and beliefs. Then we get the prejudice and microaggressions. Then you get the verbal expressions, the harassment, the threats, the put down, the catcalling, the humiliations. Just think about how many women are running around the parks, just jogging, and they're being harassed on a regular basis. How many women get harassed on the street on a regular basis just for what clothes they're wearing? We also get this happening to men, and certainly men of colour and men from and generalised people from the LGBTQR communities. They will get that verbal expression. That is a third of the way up the pyramid of harm. And then if nothing's done about what is below, we then will get up to physical expression, because people are more emboldened to act because no one's challenged them at the bottom. They've pushed the boat. They are harassing people. They are, using microaggressions. They're showing their prejudice openly. This isn't, covertly. This is openly. Then they're using verbal expressions. Now they've gone to physical expression, which is physical assault, stalking, and sexual assault. And unfortunately, what then happens is we'll go up to the top of the tree, and that's generally murder and suicide and life-changing events. Now, at the top of the tree, you rarely see a murder. You rarely see a sexual assault. But at the bottom of the pillar, we hear the language used time and time again. Highly sexualized, misogynistic language used against girls and against boys at the bottom of the tree, which is the easiest place to actually intervene. And that's what we're calling people to do, is to actually start intervening at that bottom level. And this is life-changing events. Now, a life-changing event for an individual who was affected by abuse can start at the bottom or at the top. You think about Wayne Couzens, the police officer who kidnapped Sarah Everard. We can actually trace his comments and beliefs right at the bottom of the pyramid, where he was overtly racist, sexist, homophobic, and he went right the way up to the top of the tree without being challenged by anyone. And clearly that is an extreme. What we're also saying, not everybody will actually go up to be the physical expression or the murderers or the stalkers. There will be people who stop at the verbal expression, but their behaviour is still life-changing for many people, whether boys or girls, men or women. That verbal expression, the prejudices and the bias all combine to put pressure on people to sometimes leave sport. And like I say, 55% of girls drop out of sport at the age of 15. We have to ask ourselves the questions why. Following Ofsted reports into behaviours in school by some individual boys and failures of schools. So what we have to do is we have to shake that pyramid, and we destabilise it by actually intervening right at that bottom line there. If we intervene there, we've got a better chance of the pyramid falling down, harm not occurring, everybody just getting on better. So a question to ask is, where else can we use bystander interventions? We're talking about using sports clubs. You can use these anywhere. You can use a bystander intervention in schools. Think about your workplace. Think about the workplace bullying that happens across too many places. And again, we're just getting a short, sharp look at bystander here. If you want to do the full course, we go into more in-depth look about bystander and where can actually use it. So Professor Amos Guiora, the crimes complicity, the bystander and the Holocaust. One of the comments were, bystander complicity significantly enhances perpetrator conduct and dramatically enhances victim isolation. So if you go back to the pyramid of harm, when we are hearing language, when we are seeing inappropriate behavior, when they're seeing these slights, when we're hearing "you play like a girl" repeated time and time again, what we're actually doing is we're being complicit in the bystander, in the perpetrator behavior, in the wrongdoer behavior, because we are not acting. If we fail to act, we are complicit and we are looking the other way. And again, the Sheldon review into football, I think there's about 9 or 10 references to the term kiddie fiddler in the book. We've got a kiddie fiddler. I think he's the kiddie fiddler. And yet no one decided to take that forward. No one decided thinking, well, actually, perhaps we need to start talking to the police or a safeguarding lead. No one said a dicky bird. Therefore, what we can look at is the complicity of so many people within them organisations who failed to act, failed to intervene, failed to just address that behaviour in that particular moment. And that just enhances perpetrator conduct and dramatically enhances victim isolation. And a lot of the kids in the White Review really thought they were isolated because no one was there for them to speak up on their behalf. And survivors, that's the essence of complicity. And in this book, Armies of Enablers, and what I will do, I will send links to these books. Amos Guiora interviewed 300 survivors of abuse in American sports and also in the Catholic churches, Boston. So he interviewed people from American football, college football, ice hockey, tennis, track and field, gymnastics, and also people who were victims of the Catholic Church in Boston. And what he actually found was that 300 out of the 300, 100% of them actually said what hurt more was the fact that people who were supposed to safeguard them and look after them turned the other cheek. The perpetrators are the perpetrators, but then felt more pain by those enablers who looked the other way and didn't do a thing. And that's what we've got to address, that balance, by making sure we stop looking the other way. We notice it as a problem and we take that moral compass and guidance and intervene either with the wrongdoer, the victim, or using the collective power of the allies. Because it must be remembered that every day, everywhere, in all sorts of circumstances and conditions, people suffer because others turn away rather than offer them assistance. And that's the call to arms with the Bystander programme, is people not turning away, is people looking at what's happening and doing something. And it might not be in that minute because it might not be safe, but it's about taking that step back, making the assessment, I've got to do something here, and then calling the appropriate person. It could be the college, it could be the police, it could be school teacher, it could be the DSL in school, could be a welfare officer, could be a parent. But we've got to get people to start looking and taking that action and making that big difference. Because those who look the way are guilty of crimes of omission, and the omission is the failure to act. We have to arrest that failure. And I really like Amos Guiora. His book has really sort of changed my thoughts and views and processes. And what he's actually done in 11 states in America, he's actually persuaded that particular state to make the crime of omission, put it into legislature. So it doesn't carry custodial sentence, but if somebody who's in a regulated activity, such as a teacher, a social worker, a sports coach, somebody from a religious community, if they see something and they fail to act, they will actually, it will mark their card on the DBS. So it will make future employment difficult for them. And it took a lot of people to understand what a crime of omission is. But 11 states have agreed to this. and we've got 2 states in Australia who have agreed to bring in this legislation. Now, we're not going to get this over here, but what we might have in a couple of months' time is part of the new government initiative about mandatory reporting. And those who fail to mandatory report, you're more or less guilty of a crime of omission because you've seen something and you haven't passed it on. Clearly, there'll be a lot more coming out in government about the remit because that's all about sexualised behaviour. We need to be looking at what about the screamers, the shouters, the emotional abuse, the physical abuse, the misogynistic language, the racist language, the homophobic language, which is happening in our workplaces, happening in our sports clubs, and no one's challenging it. And if we don't start challenging it, we're just developing the next generation of perpetrator. And also, we're developing the next generation of victim because our victims aren't being heard and they're just getting normalised. A lot of girls at school are subject to catcalling, having inappropriate images sent to them, basically dick pics, and the behaviour's been normalised. And these girls are just accepting that this is normalised behaviour. We have to stop that because it's not normalised behaviour. It's actually, a lot of it is sexual offender based on Sexual Offences Act. So those who look the way are guilty of crimes of omission, which is the failure to act. So bear in mind, mandatory reporting, it is coming out. When we hear more information about mandatory reporting, I'm sure colleagues from the CPSU always will get our heads together and we'll put some sort of presentation on just to make sure people understand what the concept is. But it's actually a crime of omission. So what's next? We need to develop a safer culture in sport. So colleagues, from today, we need to have an open discussion in your workplace about the role of bystander and bystander interventions and your own biases. Every single one in this call has a bias. We've all been brought up in different areas, different people, different influences. And it's about looking around your organisation and thinking, right, do we need bystander here? Have we got a problem? Have we got an issue with some parents? Have we got an issue with a couple of groups of young lads or potentially young girls? Are we hearing homophobic language, sexist language, racist language just spread out like confetti, either in the sports club, maybe in the community event afterwards, on the touchline? And if we can identify that, and you will hear it, we're then chosen to actually act. And that's why we want more clubs to look at having bystander training in your clubs so people feel empowered to act, empowered to change, and empowered to sort of do the right thing. Culture change starts at the top. So it's a top-down approach. So again, who are these committees? Who are these clubs? We've just done some training for 11 sports centres in Suffolk. And we've trained all of the top management, the middle management, and now we're actually working through the shop floor workers on the sports centre floor. Because what they want to be is a bystander organisation. So everybody in the organisation understands their role about intervening at the appropriate time, but the importance of intervening. And it doesn't start with one person, it starts with the collective organisation. So think about your clubs, think about when are the conversations where we need to have, who are the people we need to have. And it's all about training, training and training. We've been doing this now for about 18 months. We've got another couple of years left on our course. And what we want to do is keep delivering this training, the variations of training, because we've got one for volunteers, we've got one for the professional coaches, and we're also developing sport training for youngsters, because we've had a couple of clubs ask us about, could you talk to their youngsters inappropriate behaviour, about banter, and also the use of mobile phones. So training, training and training. Our training's free. We're funded by Sport England. So please do get in touch. And again, think about the concept of being a bystander organisation. So everybody sings from the same hymn sheet. Everybody is an ally in that whole club, in that whole organisation. And we're talking to a couple of football clubs and rugby clubs, and they want to promote themselves as a bystander organisation. So if the team from down the road come along and there's inappropriate behaviour, there's language or bad behaviour by parents, somebody from that organisation will step in and intervene on behalf of the organisation. And they're also going to advertise themselves as a bystander club. So they're telling other people, if you come to our ground and if you're behaving appropriately, we will call it out in that moment. Irrespective of who you are, our organisation will challenge your behaviour. So we're setting the sights. We are setting high standards. We are telling people, you come to us, you behave by our rules and not by your rules. Set that goal, be the active bystander. And we like this quote from Lieutenant David Morrison, Chief of the Australian Army from 2021. There was a big investigation into misogyny in the Australian Armed Forces. And the quote he came out is, the standard you walk past is the standard you set. So if you are seeing and hearing it and you don't do anything about it, you are actually condoning that behaviour, and you are also complicit in that behaviour itself. It's the act of omission. What we want people to really think about is that act of omission and taking responsibility to act at the appropriate time with the appropriate level of support and in a safe manner. And finally, do the small things well. There might be people on the call who remember the Lord Laming inquiry into Victoria Climby back in 2003. I remember that well. It was a horrendous inquiry. But some of the big things, there was loads of, I think it was about 170 odd recommendations. And he says, just do the small things well. And two instances. There was an instance where a fax was sent from one organisation to another organisation, and it fell on the floor. Despite the notification that a fax got sent, no one noticed that that fax had fell on the floor. So if somebody had looked at it and looked on the floor, they would have picked up valuable information which may have saved Victoria's life. We can't guarantee it, but it may have saved his life. And the other bit was Paul Manning and Anna Quao, who were the perpetrators, went into an NSPCC run children's centre looking for a clothing grant for Victoria. They were both immaculately well dressed. If anybody's seen a picture of Anna Quao, she had this manicured hair going off at one side, and yet Victoria was dressed in rags. No one actually said, you want a clothing grant dressed like that? Why on earth is she dressed in rags? No one noticed it, and no one interpreted this as a problem. Two very well dressed people wanting a clothing grant for a poor girl who's got nothing and is dressed in rags. That's what it was. Do the small things well. And safeguarding is a verb. The verb is a doing word. So therefore, we need to see actions. And part of the actions is by looking at being a active bystander and making your organisation a bystander organisation. There's our contact details, colleagues. There's my email, and that's our works phone number. You're more than welcome to contact us at any time if you want training, or talk to you SWOs who are on the call now. And to be fair, most of them on the call have actually been through some form of active bystandership training. So I'll stop sharing my screen, and I'm more happy to sort of take any questions or ask any questions, answer any queries any of you might have on the call. And sorry for the bit of a thing in the middle.
Thank you
Any
very
questions?
much, Kevin. There is someone typing in the chat, so feel free to type. Also, you can just put your hand up using the raise hand function, and we can come to you and you can ask your question verbally as well, whatever you prefer. So we'll just wait and see what is being typed. And as I say, if anyone has any questions right now, please just put your hand up.
Speak now or forever hold your tongue, as they say up the aisle.
I'll just take the opportunity as well to say thanks, Kevin, for delivering that great presentation. Not everybody would have been aware, but Kev's been up to Wales today, and he's been up super early. So yeah. He's in Derby, so that's a long old day out, and he's still been able to come out and deliver this for us this evening. So yeah, really appreciate that.
Quick 300-mile round trip. Yeah, and you know, I really do have to. You've just touched the scrape, really, the icing off the cake of bystander interventions. We've had a 40-minute introduction. The whole training goes into a lot more in depth, looking at misogyny, cultural aspects of it, the media representation of it, all the things which influence really negative behaviour, which too many of our youngsters are actually prone to at the moment.
So there's still quite a few people typing. We've had quite a lot of people so far just saying thank you very much and very informative. So we've had a couple of people saying they need to go. No questions yet.
Yeah.
So sounds like you have covered everything, Kevin.
Yeah.
If anyone does have any questions, please now just raise your hand. And if not, I guess we will give everyone an extra 9 minutes of their evening.
And don't forget, colleagues, I will send a PDF version of the slides to you all, so you've got it, and particularly the link to the report, just so, you know, when you do go to committees, you can actually show them some of the slides, just to sort of try and promote what we're actually trying to do, and also the effectiveness of intervening at the earlier stages. You know, we are a child exploitation organisation. We work across the field of child exploitation, and when things get to court, significant harm's been heard, and it's an extraordinarily expensive thing to intervene at that particular time. If we can intervene at the early stage with youngsters, using that language, behaving in inappropriate ways, it's such a more effective and cheaper option, and potentially can shape their attitudes going forward.
And it is also National Bystander Awareness Day, isn't it? I believe on the 13th of March.
It is
so
on Thursday, yeah.
if you wanted to raise that as a bit of a platform to talk around it within your club, that's a really good opportunity to do so.
I've also just popped I'm hoping everyone can see. Can I have a thumbs up if you can see the slide with the post-event feedback? Perfect. So yeah, just a reminder to fill out the post-event feedback survey if you can, and that give us some useful information going forward. You can either click on the link, I believe, or you can scan the QR code. So if you wouldn't mind just having a go at that as well, that would be much appreciated. Right, I don't see any more questions. I can't see the chat now that I've got this slide up, but I'm going to come out of it briefly and go back into the presentation. So I don't see any more questions. So unless there's anything else from anyone, thank you all very much for coming, and thank you again to Kevin for his information and insight. And thank you all very much, and hopefully see you at another forum again soon.
Okay. Good night, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
There we go.
That's everyone.
Kev's gone.
To be fair, he was up at 5 a.m. or whatever it was for his
Oh
event.
dear, yeah. Poor Kev.
Yeah, you could see like the voice was.
Yeah. When he had to
Yeah.
leave, I was like, oh, I would take over, but I can't speak to the same level on that subject.
Yeah. Cool. Oh, well, that was good. I mean, he's always really good as a presenter anyway, I think.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see if we have anyone wanting to sort of look further at the courses or the volunteer version. It'd be great if we could do something, even if we did like the 2-hour session as a face-to-face forum,
Yeah.
like regionally or something, and put something on together.
Yeah, definitely something we could look at. My active partnership have asked me to do a little section on the train the trainer course that we did. They've asked me to deliver a little bit to the active partnership, so I was going to use that as like a bit of a practice of how to give it a go, because it doesn't matter if I get it wrong to them. Yeah, definitely. I think we'd quite like to roll that out at some point further down the line, possibly in person. But yes, once we've got that be up to